And then welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here as part of the last professional development workshop hosted by the Graduate School and the Graduate Student Government today. We're really glad to have you all here, and we hope that you're excited to hear about our topic. My name is Jacob Lejeski. I've been this year's academic chair and working closely with the Graduate School to help organize this series. Today we're very excited to have panelists from on campus as well as from abroad joining in to talk about exploring career pathways, as well as doing a condensed version of our discussion for navigating the job search as an international student. So you all didn't come here to hear me talk. You came to be able to hear panelists and their experiences with these topics. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them to be able to kind of self-introduce, and then I'll be here to help moderate discussion. So with that, from our panelist side, I don't know who would like to go first. Okay, Nazmia, you've been volunteered to go first.
All right. So my name is Nazmia Puju. I am a chemist, organic chemist, and I graduated towards the end of the 2013. And then after that, I started as a postdoctoral researcher in the Department of Physics over Michigan Tech with Dr. Yap. And then we kind of write some proposals, and then we got the proposals. And then at the end of that, we set up the company named Stabilox. And I moved to the East Lansing first. I work over there. We set up the laboratory over the chemistry department, Michigan State University. Then we decided to be a company by itself, so we moved to Ann Arbor. So, but this is a Michigan headquarters. This is my office, but there are like 42 startup companies in this building. And then there are 5 other buildings just like this. So this is called incubator. And so most of the company, I can say that 90% is startup companies. That's it from me.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
I can go if that's okay.
Sure.
My name is Murali Krishnan Menon, and I completed a PhD and master's in Michigan Tech from the Mechanical Engineering Department. And I was in Michigan Tech till 2017. And I worked with Dr. Fernando Ponta, and we did research in wind turbine aeroelastic analysis. So we did computational research on improving the performance of wind turbines, but focusing on the multi-physics part of it. And after my PhD, I moved to Austria, and I joined kind of a startup company, which is now 3 to 4 years after its beginning. And here I work on computational fluid dynamics for automotive industry. But this is more like a research come industrial position, because we are developing some new technologies, and I work in the testing and validation department, where I work with code developers for different problems in industrial applications, mostly focusing on automotive industry, but we're also trying to expand. And it's been exactly 1 year since I started here. So it's been a great experience, and it's always a pleasure to help GSG with such academic and social sessions. I was part of GSG for more than half of the time I spent in Michigan Tech, I would say. So it's nice to have all of you here, and hope I can be some help.
Can I make a comment here? The reason we're having this session here today is because of Murali. Hi, Murali. Yeah. When he graduated, he said, Dr. Murthy, we need to have a session to address all of the issues of career, especially as an international student.
I wouldn't say I'm the reason for this session, but I was inspired by how much GSG wanted to do, And also we started seeing more support from graduate school and from other departments in the university. So I just brought my observations to Dr. Murthy, who's always approachable. So I mean, it's just because when you know there's someone who'll listen to you and just bring some information. So it's because of GST, I would say.
Thank you. Well, thank you for helping us being able to continue all the fun activities. We appreciate it. And then also, Swaroop, would you be willing to go ahead to go next to introduce yourself?
Sure. Can you hear that? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this is Swaroop China. I graduated in 2014 from Michigan Tech. And I see the presenter just arrived. Actually, he asked me if I can participate. So I was part of this atmospheric science program in the physics department. And I joined PNNL as a postdoc doing atmospheric aerosol research. And then I'm part of this environmental molecular science laboratory in PNNL. And then after a couple of years, my supervisor left, and then Enzo asked me to take the lead on the atmospheric aerosol component. So that's what I'm trying to build a new team here. So now I'm working as a senior research scientist here. And as we go along, I'll be happy to share my experience at the National Lab.
Thank you. And then we're down the list now.
Hi, my name is Gautam. I go by G on campus. Got my degree in engineering physics, PhD in late
Can't
2000.
hear you, Gautam. Speak up, please.
Got my degree in engineering physics in late 2007, early 2008. After that, for about a year and a half or so, I worked for AT&T in East Coast. Decided I was missing the UP and the people. Decided to come back as a postdoc for about a couple of years. And right around then, university was centralizing the IT support for on campus in general, and out of which came a need for supporting research better, and that's how my job was created. And now I serve as the director for research computing, overseeing just about every aspect of high-performance computing on campus for research and education side of things. And on the teaching side of things, I serve as a research associate professor in electrical and computer engineering, teaching graduate courses in supercomputing and related aspects, and do some research along the way.
Thank you for being here. To graduate school individuals, would you also like to introduce yourselves briefly?
Sure, I can do that. My name is Deborah Charlesworth. I think you all know me or have seen me around. I'm the assistant dean for the graduate school. I actually had my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Michigan Tech, and then I did my graduate work at Northwestern. And I came back here in 1999 as a faculty member, and then transitioned about 12 years ago to the graduate school, so administrative work. So if you have questions about faculty and administrative work and maybe what's different about those, I'd be happy to answer those, but I will mostly defer to our panelists because they're our outside experts, but sometimes we like to hear from us too.
I'm Will Cantrell. I'm a professor in physics and an associate dean in the graduate school. I started here at Michigan Tech in 2001, so I was here when, for the entire time that G has been here. And in fact, I was a member of Swaroop's committee.
I'm Pushpa Murthy, Dean of the Graduate School. I've been here at Michigan Tech for over 30 years. I'm a professor of chemistry, and I've been here long enough to have recruited Gautam J in Bangalore when I was in India once. I know Nazmiya, I've taught courses for Nazmiya, and I know Murli. I don't know you from atmospheric sciences, but welcome and have a good session.
Great. So thank you everybody again for being here. So I made sure to give the panelists a list of kind of recommended questions as a starting point for discussion. This is a panel discussion, so if anything, feel free to start stuff off by giving them what our first question on the list was and let them be able to talk about their experience in that regard. If any of you have any questions at any point, feel free to raise your hands, make yourself heard. project so that way we can hear in the room as well as for those joining remotely. And yes, so without further ado, I guess we'll start off with just the first question on the list of, so you all gave your introduction and kind of spoke about where you are currently at, but after graduating from tech, how did you decide what opportunities to pursue for your career? How did you decide? Why did you decide? I can pick a person to talk, or people can volunteer to talk.
I guess we can go with the order again. So I start from here. So I always wanted to have my own company. I still do. So the company that I have is not mine. So that's why I wanted to learn, because you need to learn the business rather than science to be able to set up the company and go from there. So I didn't have any business experience. So when I saw that opportunity, when I started as a postdoc, I know that we will try to work on the commercialization, but we just didn't know the timing. We didn't know that if we would be able to get the grants, etc. So that's why I choose this pathway. But of course, I didn't know that it will be through the doctorate, etc. Right at the beginning, because to be honest, I was thinking, the day I graduate from, Michigan Tech from the PhD, I was like, okay, I'm leaving Houghton that day. So that was my thinking. But, incidents happens. My husband gets some kind of some health problems, and then that changed my mind. Basically, he was about to lose his life in the hospital, and then I decided to stay, and then we started with Dr. Yap, and then it goes well. So this is how I chose. And then before that, what contributed to this, when I realized that I don't know anything about the business, etc., it was, one of the conferences that I attended. Its name was the Bridging the Gap Between the Industry and the Academic. So that was really impactful on me. And then all the other students in the conference, there were like 15 people, and they were all from Berkeley, Harvard, Stanford, high quality top 10 schools, but their knowledge in this kind of environment in terms of the business was way more than my knowledge. So I think that is, these kind of workshops are really important, because most of the students over there were the chair of the, students government organization, and then they were, keep planning new organizations. So the company people, because, look at the tech graduates. They're everywhere. There are tons of tech graduates in really, really good companies, in really, really, high position. But I didn't see them when I was a student over there. So I think that really helps to improve the perspective. So, your turn.
So I would maybe pick up from one point that Nazmia left, that she found a lot of highly educated professionals, like from different universities. And this was one of the reasons why I decided to completely shift my location from US and move to Austria. Because I had one conversation with my boss, and this was basically the only interview we had. And I realized that I know 20% of what they were doing in the company, but I also realized that the work environment that I would have would be really good, because the company is made up of more than 50% of people who have PhD. And this kind, and in the automotive industry, as a startup company working on CFD, I don't think I could have got a better opportunity than this, because I always wanted to be doing some research, but I also wanted to be in the industry, interacting with companies and trying to bring up faster solutions for things. So I feel it's been it was not an easy decision from the point of moving from Houghton or from moving just from US to a different continent altogether. But as I said, like as I was looking for a switch, I also thought this was challenging. So for someone who wants to continue like research, I think it's also important that you push yourself outside of your comfort zone. So when I started in this company, I was like, I think my first 3 or 4 months were horrible because I felt like I couldn't catch up with the rest of them. I didn't know anything, but like after almost a year, I can feel that there's a lot of interaction between the people in the company. So it's a lot of, for me at least, it depends a lot on like who you're working with, and from this perspective, I think I've made a good the right decision. So your turn, Swaroop.
Okay. So during my I thought like I was pretty sure that I want to go for the academia, and after completing my PhD, I only looked for a postdoc position at different universities and also National Lab, and I didn't know actually like the difference between the lab and university much, so I was open to for both position, but I only looked for postdoc because I really wanted to go to academia. That's my dream, and that's what I wanted to go. So I came here as a postdoc, and then I see a difference between the national lab and the university. So there were some good parts and there were some bad parts. And I would say, as I said, my dream was to go to academia, be a professor, and although I don't know how good I'm in teaching, but once, so I applied, for example, like a year before for academic position, but nothing happened. But then here in the lab, they wanted me to go and build the atmospheric science research, and I see that there was a great opportunity to building something new here and build a team eventually. So it's a great responsibility. And so that's why I decided to stick here and take the position here eventually. And so that was like the thing that like what you want to do in your future, and you just to go for that. For example, if you want to go for like industry, you look for industry position or like. But my aim was to go for academia, and I really want to do research. And some point probably, some teaching too, because I'm trying to, for example, as a national lab scientist, you can still be an adjunct in some university, and you can collaborate, and you can do some teaching as well. So there is some opportunity for joint appointments. So that road is still not closed, and eventually you can also, go in the future to academia if you want. So this is just a different perspective, and so that's what I decided to stick around here.
When I was about to graduate, maybe 12 to 18 months before that, I kind of had made up my mind that I wasn't a good fit for academia. And a lot of that information came from over the same span of time when my advisor let me work on this high performance computing cluster, designing it from the very scratch and building every component of it. The software research engineering side of it was very appealing, and I thought I could make myself a really good name in that aspect, and especially work in an industry on much bigger computing infrastructures and help a lot more people. So my first option, number one company that I was after was Google, and turned out one of the systems administrators had come to Michigan Tech to give a talk about time management for systems administrators. So I followed up with him and met a few other people in mini conferences and whatnot, and additional conferences my advisor had sent to. There was sufficient information by interacting with national labs and industry that it was a viable option. Unfortunately, Google did not like me after the 7th round of interviews. Basically, it came down to writing code on phone, and I got 7 out of 10. They needed 9 out of 10 correct answers to move. and they still would not budge after letting them know that I'm a self-taught computer science. I've never taken a class in computer science or anything. They were like, no, this is the rules. 9 out of 10 you're in, anything less you're out. So that kind of dream fell apart. But then fortunately my advisor knew some people in AT&T and put me in touch with them. Ended up working for AT&T. From a challenge of projects perspective, that job turned out to be a nightmare. I can confidently say work harder and on more challenging projects and more interesting projects in any 2-week span at Michigan Tech as a graduate student than I did for AT&T for a year and 2 months. So anytime somebody asks me how much time you spend, it's never about 1 year, it's year and 2 months. Every day matters. I want to be there. And it still took 3 attempts to get back to Michigan Tech, and I've been as alternate career opportunities. If Michigan Tech hadn't worked out, my plan was to go to Yale for law school and kind of take the intellectual property analysis side of things. And we had a good role model of Albert Einstein serving in that role a long time ago, so I figured I'll start somewhere at the bottom like he did and make my way up. But fortunately, Michigan Tech called on my 3rd attempt, and things worked out well since then.
Are there any, so I can, just to check in, are there any questions from the audience at all for like follow-ups on anything that was said about right now? Just to see. Okay, feel free to ask questions if any come up as it goes on. To pick up from Dr. Gautham's last point, or I guess a question that I personally have, just to know that from your experience from being abroad in other areas, the topic for this hour is exploring career options. So since leaving tech, have you interacted with anybody with a graduate degree that has had some sort of a really interesting job or career path opportunity that you never thought of or were exposed to here, but you think that, oh, that's kind of cool, that I had never thought of that before? Or are there any things like that that you wish you would have heard about sooner to have potentially been exploring as you were leaving tech? Sure.
Quite a few of my friends have gone on with pursuing law and helping companies and helping patent companies especially understand if the science or engineering that whoever is proposing is actually good or is it total BS. It's a really good way to kind of implement your master's or PhD level expertise in your area and make really good money as well. The other aspect, other branch of pursuit could be MBA. Like PhD kind of teaches us how to do project management in an informal basis, and maybe having a formal MBA background, whether it's at Michigan Tech as part of your grad school or after you leave while you're working, could be a very invaluable experience in learning formal terminologies and methods and having those 3 magical letters on your resume as well. Those 2 seem to be fairly common options amongst friends that have since gotten to know that they've either come out of Michigan Tech or other places.
Any thoughts from our panelists joining remotely?
I would like to add one thing which I learned about during the job search, and this is a resource mostly used for graduate students who want to pursue a career in the academia, is the grant recommendation website. It's called the Grant Forward. So it's like a website that we have access to as Michigan Tech students and alumni, and this gives you different grants. I mean, it basically lists different grants that are available at that present time, or like in the next 1 or 2 years, what is available, and it's there for most kind of pure science or engineering fields. So this, I think if I do this during, I don't know, halfway through my PhD or something, maybe I could have also explored that option. Not saying I would have got something, but at least it's an option for PhD students who are thinking of are assured that they want to pursue a career in academia and write a grant for themselves or with their professors in Michigan Tech or a professor you know from some other university. So, yeah.
And as a short follow-up to that, if you're interested in learning more about grant writing, there was an academic seminar by GSG this year that has been recorded and is available on our website. And the website that Murli mentioned is talked about a little bit in there. So pardon the shameless GSG plug.
So I don't know the background of the, you guys, but for my case, I mean, so I'm chemist. I like to do research. I was like, I can do research forever, but I know that I cannot be faculty because teaching is not my thing. So I don't have that patience. So that's why I was thinking, no way I can be faculty. But then later I decided, oh, wait a minute, maybe I can be faculty. So I'm like, you come to a point, you don't know, I didn't know what I want to be at the end. But again, in that conference, you learn about the different career pathways. So one of the pathway was consultant. So consultant is something that you have the science background from any, main, physics, mathematics, chemistry, whatever. And then you learn more about the law. And then you can be, patent attorney. You learn a little bit about the health part of the issues. Then you can be, working in the health sciences. And then you learn about the, I think it's more MBA type of work. I'm still not sure about that, but you go through tons of case studies and then you become a consultant for many companies. Those are like investing companies. So those are the other career options that I saw and then I have never heard of when I was, about to graduate before. But those were also not a good fit for me because, I don't really remember things. I cannot be a lawyer, etc. So that was another options, I think, different pathways. You shouldn't think straightforward. You should always think that there are other opportunities that you may not be aware of.
I'd like to at least say a little bit about academia from the standpoint, Nazmia said, I could never be a professor because I don't like to teach. And that's good to know what you don't like to do because you certainly don't want to be in a job where that's the case. But I think sometimes, and particularly if this is the only university you've seen in the US, if you're thinking about a career in academia, you need to think broadly about what type of university you might want to be going into. Because Michigan Tech is one type of university, but there are really small liberal arts colleges that need good science faculty where all you might do is teach, but you might only have 15 students in all your classes. But then you might be at a University of Michigan or an MIT where you might teach, my advisor taught one class a year. And he's kind of like, oh, I gotta teach a class again. But he 2/3 of the year, all he did was research. So you really have to think about, if you're thinking about a career in academia, don't look at your experience here and go, I don't want to be at a place like Michigan Tech, so I can't be faculty. Think, what kinds of pieces do I like about academia, and look for universities that might kind of fit those. And that's something that when I was doing my job search, I after a couple of years of experience, I knew more things about what I liked. And so I tailored my job search to those universities that really matched the skill sets that I had and the passions that I brought to the job. So if any of you are thinking about those kinds of careers, there's a wide range of career options in academia beyond just a job like Michigan Tech.
What do you mean you say type of academia? Do you mean more teaching academia and research? This
Yeah,
type
so
or something else?
every university has its own blend of teaching and research, and each university has its own mission. And so there are universities in Michigan like Albion and Alma that have, like 2,000 students, and they're all undergraduates, and the research is very different than you would see at Michigan Tech. But then there's universities that are, 30 or 40,000 students, and just even the size of the institution has a big role to play in what your experience is at that university. At Michigan Tech, scientists and engineers are in the minority or the majority, but someplace else you're not. And if you're the engineer, you're the nerd on campus, and all the humanities people laugh at you because there's more of them than you. And it's a different kind of environment. And I interviewed at a private university, a public university with teaching. I interviewed at a big top 10 university. I interviewed at Michigan Tech. I've interviewed at medium sizes like Michigan Tech. And the difference experience you have at those different universities is really broad. And so if you really like teaching but research isn't your thing, there's a university for that. If you really like research but teaching isn't your thing, there's a university for that. If you want to be blended, there's a place for that. So if there's pieces of the academic experience that you like, tailoring your job search to those universities can result in a better fit for you and the university.
Following up on what Dr. Charlesworth said, that's something I wish I had known when I went to AT&T. I love teaching. I didn't want to be without it, but I figured I could approach any community college in the area and have them give me an opportunity to teach at least in nights or weekends type of thing. But apparently I needed a teaching certificate to be even let into the door. But things are a lot different now. Just about every national lab within the US and most companies will let you some time off if you want to go teach in a community college or in any nearby university as an adjunct professor, especially if the university has a need and the company sees benefit of you working there, especially if you can bring students back that are good ones so that they could invest in good students and good employees and not have to go through the whole screening process. A classic example is the Oak Ridge National Lab. They have a very close partnership with University of Tennessee at Knoxville. Half of their good staff work as faculty, adjunct faculty at the university. So there's a pipeline of future employees coming through UT Knoxville into Oak Ridge. And it's true of any other national lab around the country as well. And apparently Google now lets people teach too, so wish they had done it 10 years ago. But so that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I also would like to add something that is totally, I totally agree with Dr. Charlesworth. Experience is changing your perspective, basically. So at the time, I hated the teaching. I'm like, oh, I cannot teach anybody anything. But, whatever you do, you have to teach something to somebody. Right now, I have, we hire some other people. We have employees. You got to teach something to somebody. So your perspective is changing, and then she's totally right about it. For example, when I came over here, UM has just research position. So you are just research faculty. You can be just research faculty, and then your salary is based on the grants. And then, so if you are good at writing a grant, which means your writing skills and communication skills should be really good. So then, you're good to go. Still in the university, still just do the research.
Out of curiosity, for those of you that are here right now, so how many people are interested in potentially going into academia? Do you know? Or if that's an interest, feel free to raise your hand. Okay. What about industry people? Okay. And any brave souls that I don't know, that's why I'm here today. Okay.
And then another group in between the two, academia and industry.
Okay. Oh, very cool.
What's our mix of like how many people here are studying for a PhD? And the rest are masters?
So I saw predominantly industry focused. Are there any burning questions on that side of things at all? Just to check in and see. Okay. Another question, I guess, that I would have in terms of exploring career options, what would be so we have most people, I guess, most people, I think, have kind of what their intended career path might be or what they're very interested in exploring right now. But I guess from our panelists, what would be your biggest piece of advice to all of us as we're going about our career pathway search? Like, what's your biggest takeaway from your experience that, oh, I wish I would have known, or I highly recommend that you consider, think about, try to do X or whatever?
So my biggest takeaway is that invest in yourself. So what does that mean is something that I heard about, read about. So when I was PhD, even master, even undergraduate, I was working in the lab day and night, weekends, weekdays, doesn't matter. But that is not enough, That is nothing to do with your career path or whatever. So what matters is how well you communicate, how well you write, and then how knowledgeable you are. So it does, of course, you have to have some technical skills, but I think it doesn't really matter much about the other things that you need to know. So there should be some kind of balance. And then the other one would be my suggestion to you guys, which I started recently, finally, that exercise every day. Like 20 minutes, 15 minutes. I was like, I don't have time, I cannot do anything. I don't have time, I cannot do it. But what happens is, if you do that, it just really helps you to focus and then be productive more. And then I would say read, just read about anything. Before I was thinking in a different way. I was like, I'm gonna read what I am interested in, but then you are missing the other world. So that's my suggestion and then takeaway.
I couldn't agree more with what she said. Like, complementary skills are super critical. It's easy to continue working on what we think we are good at, but it's super also easy to ignore things that we know we are not good at. Writing, and coming from where I come from, writing long sentences is very, very normal and considered a sign of proficiency or the command of the language. Doesn't work that way in the US. Sentences need to be short and to the point, and every sentence has to convey something to the audience. And if it's 8 sentences long, the whole paragraph is 1 sentence, people lose attention. So learning the culture or having the cultural awareness to your communication aspects is super critical. And I would say, like, this is a core component of the course that I teach. Every assignment there's an essay-like question, and I often get remarks back, like, we're in a computing class, why are we worried about writing essays? So if we can't communicate what we know for science or engineering, it doesn't have much value. And these are the areas that our university marketing and communication is really, really good at, specifically Alison Mills and her team. Anything that they write or ask you to read, hang on to every word they say. It's really, really useful. And learning to not use technical jargon is also very beneficial. And learning to talk to anybody and everybody, and even at the expense of being nosy, can come in very handy and create opportunities that you didn't know exist before. So those would be a couple from my end. And please read biographies of people that have come before you. So there's things that didn't work out for them or worked out for them, and alternate career paths that they took to where they are. That helps a lot.
I would think one of the key things I would have done better was time management, and this might seem very cliche, but the time management I'm talking about is throughout your graduate career. It's easy to be carried away with the daily routine that you have to finish. Like if you have classes, then you want to finish your homework, and you have to prepare for exams, or you have to finish project. So it's just easy to get stuck in this loop until the last semester or the last 1 year before you start looking for the job. And this is crucial for PhD students more than masters, I would say, because in some sense, when you have a very focused degree, then your window for, especially industrial jobs narrows down a bit. Whereas for masters, the window, it's a bit more open. How the industry sees you is different than how you see the industry, right? So when I talk about investing time, is every semester, let's say you decide you spend 10 to 20% of the hours that you spend in grad school towards looking for jobs. And it doesn't matter whether you apply or if you, it could be your first or second semester in grad school, but you can still talk to companies. You can, and this is not only going to career fair. This is also about looking up several open positions on the net, making contacts through platforms like ResearchGate or LinkedIn. These will do, obviously there's one side of it where you'll open up more opportunities. On the other side, it's a self-reflection also. You might have a conversation with a very random person who's trying to help you, and then you might discover that, I wanted to do teaching all this while, but now I feel like I should, or the other way around, something like that. So I think investing this 10 to 20% of your time every semester towards thinking about what you want to do after grad school will be useful.
Swaroop, biggest takeaway from you? Piece of advice?
So I would say that it's about a couple of points about the exploring thing. I think that of course sometimes we don't know exactly, like, halfway your PhD that we want to go for industry or we want to go for like academia. So sooner you know is better, first of all, because the thing is that when you like your job, you're passionate about it, everything makes it easy. Like, if you're working hard or if
Technical difficulties. Swaroop, could you repeat that? We lost connection briefly.
Oh, okay, sure. So I was saying that about the exploring career path is better, like sooner you know about the path, because sometimes we don't know, like halfway our PhD we're gonna go for industry or we're gonna go for academia. But my point is that the job, like the one you are passionate about, make everything easy. Like if you really want to work in the industry, you are passionate about it, so your life will be simple then. But then if you really don't, you're struggling, I'm here, I don't like this stuff, then it makes things difficult, right? So my point is that go with your passion, and sometimes we really don't know what we want, especially like when you have our PhD. So if you say, for example, you wanna try the industry, maybe you can look for internship opportunities. You can try for a semester if you want, or also talk to your supervisor. For PhD, what I want is it's always good to have one, good mentor that makes your life also very, simple. And I've been very lucky for that. So that's one thing about the exploring. And the thing is that once you know, for example, that you want to go for academia, you should search a little bit in advance. So what mistake that I made, I think that I started a little bit late. And for example, when you finishing your PhD, you really don't know, like, is this semester I'm finishing up, maybe the next semester, and it happens sometimes because you don't know, like, probably you're doing some experiments and it's going to finish up, or is it enough? So sometimes you're kind of debating, like, should I graduate this semester or next semester? But I think that you want to have at least 1 year before that you should start thinking about the job. For example, when I was looking for a postdoc, I tried to do some fellowship option, but those things I started a little bit late, and I realized that there was a lot of work. So plan I was at least 1 year. And then, so that's about the career option. And the other thing I want to talk about is the reading thing, because I really like when you guys talk about the reading, because I think it's really important. If you start doing more, I mean, all of you do reading for your research for sure, but one thing actually, my colleague came here and he was telling me about the reading practices. So he always find like half an hour every day to read something. And sometimes, let's say you have these, again, maybe this is a little bit too much academic point of view, but let's say if you want to know something about science, but not necessarily in your field, but something else, and you read those in a Nature or Science article, you see always this in news, like you publish an article and somebody write a plain language summary and publish as a news. So those article is really good and easy to understand. So you can think about different research, and then when you read the thing, that helps you to think like a different perspective. Like for example, I'm doing research mostly atmospheric aerosol, and then I started reading something about plants. So now I'm doing some more research, like little bit research on the plants and plant microbe interaction and connect to the aerosol. So my point is that the more you read is any kind of thing is always helpful to in your career path. It doesn't matter if you're in industry or in academia.
Thank you all for sharing those. I know for me personally, I always like to hear about that stuff. Question?
I have a question, maybe silly, I don't know, but I would be happy to know. Have you ever faced with situation when you, for example, find a job in academia or in industry, and employee says, "Oh, you're international, I don't want to take you." Do you have any statistic about this rejection? It's important for us because we are all international.
Actually, I would say that's like a perfect transitionatory question into our next segment, which is like the next hour is kind of, so we had the first hour, we labeled it as career options, and our second hour we've labeled as navigating the job search as international students. So I guess if there are no everybody is international students, I believe. So we can go ahead, and that's a perfectly valid question. So
I can maybe start with answering that question. It happened once or maybe twice with me, and it's always, I mean, it's never a good instance when someone tells you like that. It's always like motivating, but. I think the fact is that we also need to know what situation your employer is in. So sometimes we see only the fact that you like the position and you see yourself fit in that position. So you feel like, why should my nationality or why should my position matter to the employer? But sometimes it's just the monetary factor, but sometimes it's legal issues that they have. So I would say if someone genuinely tells you that, sorry, we cannot hire you because you're an international, it's not because you are not good. It's just because their hands are tied. I would say maybe, I mean, I cannot tell a percentage, but I would like to assume that 80% of the situations would be because their hands are tied, not because you are not a good fit. So the best workaround for that is leave that behind and continue looking for this. I mean, the way, also what I just wanted to quote my own example. When I was rejected, this was a position, I believe, in the UK or in Germany, I'm not sure. But this was a position related to my PhD research. And they said, sorry, if you're in the US, we cannot interview you or we cannot give you an opportunity, but we'll suggest that you look for positions in our company in the US, But this position was in Germany or in UK. And their explanation was that they cannot hire someone from US. And it's the same platform LinkedIn, through which my current employer found my profile, and he just told me that we are ready to hire you and do all the legal things that I needed to make my move easy from US to Austria. So sometimes, like, it really depends on the employer, and my current employer is doing this for people from all over the world. They're like hiring people from India, from China, from South America. So it really depends on the employer, and never let such a rejection uh, weigh you down on your capabilities. That's what I would suggest.
I think as an employer standpoint, not everybody can hire international. Like our company cannot. We don't have that money to support the legal issues of hiring an international student. So, for example, I am still part of the Michigan Tech. I have an H-1B visa through the Michigan Tech. I'm a research associate working part-time, but my visa for company is a concurrent visa, which we didn't know that. It's not, I even didn't know that there's a difference between the academic H-1B and an industrial H-1B. Academic H-1B, you are limitless. You can apply any job in academia you want. But if you don't have the industrial H-1B, you cannot apply at all. I mean, even though you apply, you won't be hired because they don't have money to sponsor you, most of the companies. And then, you know, of course, the big companies have the money to support you, but they don't actually prefer international. So let's say you, like two person, one is US citizen, the other one is, let's me, and then equal in terms of the skills and etc. So why should I pay extra $10,000, $20,000 to support this person if they have the equal skills? So sorry guys, but that is the reality. So I would suggest for those of you who plan to stay in the US, start applying for the green card, but that is like also something related with the publication, etc. So of course you can find a sponsor to yourself. I'm not saying you don't have any opportunity. I'm just saying your chances are lower than others, basically.
I mean, is that means that situation be worse as a master student to find a job? I mean, I noticed like you guys are all PhD and to find a job, but is that even harder as a master student to find a job in here?
Maybe I can answer that. Maybe I can try to answer that question because I have had a lot of friends who finished masters from Michigan Tech, and if you're talking about the industry, it really depends on what industry you're talking about. If you're in engineering, then I would say it is not. It is harder for PhDs to find an industrial position than for masters. Is my observation. It's not a statement, but it's not difficult for masters to find a position, but you have to think of all the factors because the way the industrial position system works in US is very complicated, and that's why there's this whole political discussion about hiring internationals, because there are so many loopholes that several small companies try to use to hire employees and put them in Daimler or put them in Ford. But for someone who graduated immediately from grad school, it's a great position to start with. But maybe 1 year down the lane, when it comes to your job visa as an international student, this might put you in a soup where you like the job and you want to stay, but your employer cannot help because the immigration policies have changed. So you have to continuously think about this during your grad school, and once you get a job, like what is going to be your situation the next year. is your employer going to sponsor your visa? And if they do, how does like the current immigration situation, how does that impact impact your chances of getting a work visa? But I think like these are factors which is difficult to think about when you're searching for a job. But just have these in the back of the mind. It might help in the long run, I would say.
Maybe further answer your question. So it is difficult for master's students, partly because your stay at this university as a master's student is about 50% in time compared to a normal PhD student spends their time. And if you're a coursework master's students, there is no one person that watches over you for the 2 years. A PhD student has a formal advisor or 2 advisors plus an advisory committee that they're expected to frequently interact with. There's somebody that knows the ins and outs of you as a PhD student, not so if you're a coursework master's student. So one recommendation from my end, if you're a coursework master's student or even if you're a research master's student, number one, do all the assignments and then some in your courses that you're taking, because you do want to leave a lasting impression on that faculty that's teaching that course that you did something more than what was expected. My rule of thumb is you'll never be remembered for doing what you're supposed to do. So do something more. And 2, just because the course is done doesn't necessarily mean your interaction with the faculty has to end, especially if it's an area of interest that you want to pursue as a career. Stay with them, do independent study, will cost you time, may not pay you immediately, but just about every job opportunity that I got after when I left Michigan Tech is because what people said about what I knew, not necessarily what I knew. And that had to do with my advisor and my advisory committee and my mentors that spoke in glorious terms about what I could do. And one of the really good things that came handy in my case was my advisor had the habit of making you work on one really important project that was building toward your dissertation, then 1 or 2 projects that seemed to have no connection at all. But the idea was if the big thing failed, you didn't feel like you were wasting all your time and you still had something to rely upon and build something, make a mini chapter or at least an appendix in your dissertation or your thesis. And those are the projects that came from different institutions. So we were basically interacting with 3 institutions at any given time. So there's networking and collaboration going on, and it's not an exaggeration to say that your advisor knows you better than you think you do yourself. So if they tell you to do X, Y, and Z, do X, Y, Z, and then a bag of chips, it often helps. Not doing or doing only X, Y, and not doing Z doesn't help you, doesn't help them. And same thing goes with your any course that you do that has a project where the particular faculty judges your work. Those would be my recommendations from my end.
One quick point I would like to add to, and I think this came to my mind as G was speaking about how you build your profile. It's easy to just think of starting a job search with your resume, but for masters and for people who are applying in the industry, it also helps to develop a portfolio. And this applies to mostly like people who are doing only coursework, because what you put in the resume that I did these courses and I completed these projects, but then it becomes too monotonous for people who are hiring, because they have like 1,000 resumes and they're looking at the same thing. It's just black and white for them, right? So if you are able to like do something more with the projects that you complete in a coursework or an assignment, maybe you do some fancy results that look really just visually attractive, right? And makes this this can be done on paper. You can create your own website. You can just create some kind of animation that defines your portfolio. There are so many resources out there just if you like spend some time and then you develop something, and every semester if you develop something, by the time you're like really looking for a job, you feel like, okay, I can put these 5 projects together and build a good portfolio. And this might change the game when you're applying to.
So Ruth, did you have any thoughts on this topic?
Mm,
You don't need to have thoughts also, just wanted to give you a chance to
no,
contribute.
that's fine.
Maybe one last bit from my end.
Yeah, go ahead.
Consider having your business cards printed. I know university has a policy against it right now, partly because the case study that put some other university on the hook for some money and whatnot. But even if it's your own personal business cards, the chances of a response from anybody that you give out your business cards to is probably 8 to 10 times higher than if you just wrote it down on a piece of paper and gave it to them. And this is true of the colloquial speakers. So you could start here. Anybody comes here to give a talk, go and have a meaningful conversation, give your business card to them, and they'll likely follow up. And it doesn't hurt to put your ego aside and initiate that conversation either. If you don't hear from them in 2 days, send them a polite note saying like, hey, by the way, you came to Michigan Tech, I enjoyed your talk, we met, we chatted. Give them a context and just generic LinkedIn invitation that says, oh, somebody wants to connect you. They'll accept, but they won't know why or how. And I found, like in first 4 years of my grad school, I didn't know the concept of business cards. I thought it was only for businesses, not for academia. So I would just tear off a piece of paper, write my email address, never heard from anybody. But in the last year and a half or so, the response rate got slightly higher and higher. And what also helped is, even though they're professional contacts, everybody celebrates holidays. Doesn't have to be Christmas, doesn't have to be Thanksgiving, but everybody celebrates Christmas. Everybody looks forward to the new year. And if they tell you anything about their personal life and you get their business card, come home and write it down before you forget. So that gives you a little more personal context to write to them. And when you write to them, ask how their wife is doing, how their daughters are doing, how their sons are doing, whatever information they told you. And write to them periodically, like once or twice a year, so that you're on their radar all the time. And just because you found a job doesn't mean those emails have to stop either. And to this day, every New Year and every Thanksgiving, and before I go to my annual conferences that I go to, I send about 400 emails. I never hear back from about 250 of them, but the other 150 are still in good touch. So make it part of the time management that Murali talked about and Nasmia talked about. Carve out some time for taking care of your future self down the road.
May I have a business card?
Sure. Only need a bunch here. Help yourself.
So, navigating job search, I know, is a very popular topic, and I'm sure you have questions. So, are there any questions? Anybody's?
I would say, location is really important to find what you're looking for. For example, I first moved to Lansing, and then I looked for the chemist, scientist positions, but I couldn't find really much thing over there. But even in Houghton, there are startup companies, and then I think you can do like internship. So that might be helpful. And, if it is a startup company, you could be just like me, where you are part of the Michigan Tech, but still can work in a company, in an industry. So, think about those kind of stuff. For example, I have an undergraduate student working with me right now, part-time. He's coming every day 2-3 hours. And then he's also doing master coursework, and he's really good. I would like to hire him. no matter what. So because, you know, if you find somebody is really, really good, you try your best to do whatever you can. But if you're just, you know, in that room sitting, just doing the coursework, etc., nobody will know you. You have to differentiate yourself with the experience. And then actually, when I look at the CV of that guy, first I'm like, he was a chemical engineer, and I'm looking for a biologist, and I'm like, no, he didn't do anything for me. But, you know, there was another person insisted that, okay, just try him. And then I'm happy that I tried out. You know, CV sometimes doesn't reflect what skills you have. That's also something. And then I know that there are multiple startup companies, even in Houghton. I mean, I think for academic, it's easy. You just go to the lab work, just talk to the professor, just do what they're asking for.
Thank you, Nazmia. Opportunity for questions, or I do have prepared questions that I can go off of, but I'm sure your questions might be more anything. Okay, so I guess since we're on this topic of navigating the job search, could you, would any of you be willing to just talk about what is like the standard, what was your process as specifically through the lens of an international student for navigating your job search, any difficulties or challenges, tips or tricks, things that you wish you would have known, pieces of advice that you learned along the way that you would like to be able to pass on, anything like that. And if, as they're discussing this, if you have any questions or follow-up questions, feel free to just raise your hand. I'll make sure that you get a chance to ask your question and are heard. I don't know who would like to go first. I can pick if you so choose.
So I will go ahead again. Sorry, guys. So I think from my perspective, I, you know, start applying through LinkedIn. I had a web page, and then, you know, sometimes people tell you something, you listen, you think you understand it, but you don't apply it, then it doesn't really work. So what they told me is, you know, now everything is automatic, and then they will screen your CV through the automatic software, and then they will grab some words. So if that can pass the automatic screening, then the HR person will see it. If you can pass through the HR, it will go to the etc., etc. So through the applications, I mean, the companies that I apply, I got nothing, zero, even no interview. Then I'm like, okay, there must be something wrong with my CV. Then, you know, I don't know how those guys know that, but then people start approaching you. Okay, we write better resumes. Then I paid, I think, $500 something. So I asked somebody to write me a resume. So that I'm like, there must be something in it. I got nothing. Don't do it. And then after a year, another resume person approached me. At that time, I had the job, but then she told me that your resume looks so many parts missing. I can help you. I'm like, I go back to the other person. I'm like, she's saying this. Can you believe it? You write this. What is missing in this thing? You know. So don't. I would think right now those are just traps. So how I got my job is through personal connections, and then everybody around me got their jobs through personal connections. So, and then even in here, if I hear somebody is looking for a job, then I know another, because there's 42 companies in here. Another person is looking for a job, and then looking for an employee. Then I'm like, okay, here is the resume. Then it goes in front of the person who is gonna really hire you. So it is hard, guys. Sorry, it was hard for me.
I just sorry, go ahead.
No, please go ahead. That's fine.
No, I just want to make the same point, because I don't know much about the industry job search because I never did it. But this is what I heard, and also because my sister and my brother-in-law, they works in the industry, and this is so for the industry that you need to have make a connection. And all of my friends who are working in the industry, everybody got to the personal connection. So basically, not necessarily the person know you, but for example, if you know a friend and that friend work in that company, so ask them forward your resume. That basically goes to the HR desk. Otherwise, you get lost in thousands of resume. So this is like if you are going for industry position, this is very, very crucial to make connections. Even though if you don't know, you can join in the LinkedIn, to like send an email to a friend, but making a connection is very important for the industry position. For the academic position, it's totally different ball game. So basically, you go to a conference or you go to, for example, make a connection to your supervisor. Or, that goes to like the recommendation or somebody knows. In the academic position, sometimes it's hard to find, like there's a position open. So sometimes they send an email to the email list, and let's say your supervisor or another faculty member are involved, and they say, oh, somebody's looking for a position, and they can forward it to you. So you should talk to not only your supervisor, but also the other faculty members in the department that if you are looking for a position, so they can either forward you sometimes the position that you might didn't see it. And so again, I just want to make a point that is two different case, like a different approach if you apply for the academic position, if you apply for the industry. But for industry, as Nazmi said, it's very important for making the connection.
And I would like to reinstate the same thing. Like in industry, yes, you need connections, and don't be reluctant to approach to someone who you've probably known like 3 years back, and you know that they're working in a company that you want to be in. You're just, I mean, if nothing, you just lose a word. If you write them a message on LinkedIn and they don't respond, you don't lose anything. It's just words on the internet. So don't be reluctant to approach. And through LinkedIn and through several networking, I realized one thing is if there's someone who was studied in Michigan Tech or who was hired a Michigan Tech person, they might just approach you and tell you that they're interested to hire you. During my search for job in US, there was one person who was like a senior manager in one of the software development for simulations. There was a person who contacted me and said that he saw my profile in their website, and he just he doesn't have a position to hire me, but he just contacted me to say that please stay in touch if you still find a job or you didn't find a job, because if something opens up, I'd like to just interview you to see if you fit that position. And he said this because he was an alumni and he saw that I was also from Michigan Tech. And I mean, eventually nothing struck together because obviously you don't know what is going on the company side. So make contacts and maintain contacts, like G mentioned. And on LinkedIn, I think this is one of the biggest search tools that you should make use of. And when you're sending, one thing I would recommend is when you're sending a connection request to someone whom you don't know, please always use a 1 or 2 liner message with it. It really doesn't look nice when you get a random contact request with no information in it. I mean, you're not trying to make friends with that person. You're just trying to get some help. So just write that 1 word or 1 line or 2 lines saying that I'm a Michigan Tech graduate. I saw your profile was interesting. What I am looking for. Do you have time? Something like that. And on this line, on these lines, I think Career Services has an amazing team. They have several options for you to kickstart your job search, and this is one thing I really found useful when I started my job search. And just take a one-on-one appointment with one of the career advisors and prepare yourself for that meeting and ask all your questions. And I'm sure this will be a good start for any career search.
Dr. Dawson?
Adding on to what has been said so far, a couple more things on the resume or the resume plus portfolio side of things. Please make it a habit to update it once a month, even if you're not looking for jobs right away. The night before, like Morley said, if somebody calls you, you don't have the time to update the resume with everything that you've done. It takes considerable amount of time. Use the right phrases and not have typographical spelling mistakes. English isn't my first language. I'm sure it's none of your first language either, so it takes time to revise and review. And Career Services does a phenomenal job and of reviewing your resume, and make friends with a Michigan Tech Multi-Literacy Center, or what's known as a Writing Center in Humanities. They can also help kind of phrase your ways, and they'll have you narrate your story, then compare whether your narration matches your writing. Because when people get your resume, we are not there to tell our story. So it's few sentences that talk about it. And ask for help sooner than later. So that's on the resume portfolio side. And the second concept or second aspect is the social media. Everybody is on it. Everybody's uncles and aunts and grandmas are on it. And every company or institution that we want to be associated with is on it too. So Facebook for most of us is too polluted, for lack of a better term. We've had too much personal stuff on it. Nothing can be done about it for the most part. But there are other social media profiles like LinkedIn being number one, Twitter being a close second, Instagram being a not too distant option. Have a clean and professional profile. So posting your cat and pet photos or selfies in a bar especially doesn't help anybody. So keep it clean. It has to reflect your professional interest, especially Twitter and LinkedIn. And if you're doing in a lab or something, or you're taking a course and it has a visual component, happily post those things on Instagram and kind of develop that side of it as well. And tag the people that you think should be watching them. So for example, in supercomputing, HPC is a very common term or common hashtag. So anything that you hashtag with HPC, 1 million people see it, if not more. Chances of even 1% or a fraction of 1% reaching back to you is 1,000 people. So it's a very easy way to build your community of your own people, like-minded people that you want to be associated with. And like Nazmia said, if you know the wherewithals and can have a website, please have a website, but please make sure it's modern, current, and responsive. It shows up properly on an iPhone as well as it does on a regular website. And please make sure somebody proofreads and spell checks it for you as well. And I have a close kind of community of friends or native English speakers. The trade-off is I'll make them whatever food they want to eat, ethnic food that I can't cook. They help me with things that I don't know, English being the number one. So bartering relationships aren't all that bad.
So I guess we've been talking about social media, and resumes are good things to prepare. Are there any other documents or other things that are important to bear in mind as you're preparing or going through the career search process, other than resumes, CVs, social media, or anything like that that you can recommend?
Cover letter.
Okay. And any advice on cover letters as well?
So that is a mistake that I made. So I'm like, oh, I'm too busy to find a job because I need to finish my thesis, research, etc. So what you do is you prepare one template and then use it everywhere. But it doesn't work, I can assure you. So be specific to the job application. And then right now I'm, reviewing the resume, I'm reviewing the cover letters. So you can understand the passion. I mean, how passionate you are or how willing you are. Are you just looking for a job to make money, or are you really willing to work for the company? I can differentiate that from the letter. So just show that. If you're just sending out the template, it doesn't work. it's what I did.
Or just a quick follow-up to that, what's a good tell for you for when you can tell a cover letter demonstrates passion versus not?
So the company makes an advertisement, right? Tells them what they're looking for. So once you read it, you can understand that if it is a like template, general thing, like for example, I just read one cover letter saying that, he really, really likes the company. Everybody really, really likes the company. That's so. Nothing tells. It doesn't tell you anything. He's like he would like to be back in here. He was somewhere else, etc., etc. Or he's a, I shouldn't say that. Anyways, so just be more specific, okay? So I shouldn't do that part, but more specific the job.
Can I ask a question to Nazmia about this cover letter? So, is it also true that it's important to have the keywords that you have, let's say, in the job posting? So if I see, let's say I see a job posting and then I take some keywords, so maybe like technical keywords, it could be soft skill keywords. And is it important that these keywords are there in your cover letter and in your resume?
I think it is really important for the resume because it is going through the software screening. If the software cannot catch those keywords, they won't even consider you. Okay. And then, some people try to show up that they're a nerd, they know, so they try to change the word in a weird way. Or they say excellent writing communication. Okay, let's say excellent writing skills. That will make more sense. And then you see a typo after two sentences below. So then you're like, what kind of excellent writing? Just be honest. So, those are kind of, or excellent communication skills, and then he cannot or she cannot talk to you over the phone, or you don't understand what she's trying to say. But that doesn't mean that you are not a good, technically very good skilled person. So actually when I was looking for somebody for hiring, so I'm like, no way I can communicate with that person, so I don't want this person. So I'm not HR expert, I'm chemist. So, but this is a startup company, so what happens is you do all the work. So, HR person can catch better skilled person. Or I don't know, for example, what I would do in my cover letter right now if I'm writing, so show proof. Excellent writing skills. I got this grant, this grant, this grant. I bring this much money to my company. I did this. I published in here, there. So those kind of things shows the proof. Those are things shows that you are talented. Those shows your technical skills, I think, rather than saying I'm excellent, I'm great, etc.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Dr. Kausar?
I have a question.
Okay, great.
So previously you talked about getting jobs through personal connections. So wouldn't that make putting a lot of effort into hundreds of job applications where you write a lot of cover letters for each job? Point is.
What was that question for me? But irrespective, I would like to start answering. Job search is not easy. Sorry. You have to take it the hard way that when I started and I spoke to people who found a job, they told me the same thing, and I realized it through my own experience. You send 100 applications, probably 10 to 15 of them will come back to you, and maybe 1 or 2 of them will give you an interview. So job search is hard. Let's face it, as graduate students, we are adult enough to realize that nothing comes easy. I mean, your current position as a graduate student didn't come easy. and that doesn't make the next step in your career easy either. If you want something that you really like are passionate to do and you want to be happy in your job, then yes, you might end up sending thousands or hundreds. I wouldn't say thousand. I hope nobody has to send thousands of applications, but you would still have to send hundreds of applications, and that's why my primary point or primary suggestion was to spend time, because spending all of this time in your last semester or the semester after you graduate, when you're also struggling for your OPT requirements and CPT requirements, all these things, is tough. It's really hard. But if you spend the same time split across different semesters, it might make it a bit more easier.
So other thing I would say is, if there's a company that you are really interested, and then let's say you try to find the connections through the Michigan Tech alumni or somebody else, you couldn't find it, just don't give up. Just keep applying. I heard, from my friends that they just rejected like 5-6 times, but at the end they're like, why are you keep applying? Stop it. Let's interview what's happening. And then he got the job. So that's also something. Just, I think in here, I don't know, like I'm rejected. My husband is rejected thousands of times, but we're still able to make something.
Dr. Gautam?
So when you actually get a call for an interview, that one or two companies, like normally said, calls you for an on-site interview or even a phone interview. And more often than not, the last question from their end is, do you have any questions for us? Please never say no, you don't have any questions. So that implies, leads up to builds on what the other three have said so far. Do your research on the company. Even if you know somebody that worked there, that got you in, you have to know what their rationale is, what their philosophy is, what they're trying to do, how they were built. And you could always ask any of those questions. Preferably try not to bring up money, because we're not trying to hire you just to pay you. We want to see something passionate or passion come out of your end. Ask a meaningful question about the history of the company or where they see themselves in the next 3 to 5 years. And trust me, not everybody gets asked that question. When you go to interviews, they'll ask you where you see yourself in 3 to 5 years. It's a fairly honest question to ask them back as to where they see themselves in the next 3 to 5 years. So that should give you some information whether you want to be part of it or not part of it. And number 2, have your references ready on the hotline per se. They should know, Professors X, Y, and Z should know that you're putting their name down as a reference, and make sure you have their permission before you put their name down. There are some that only write 4 reference letters per year because it's a very time-consuming process to make that investment in each of those 4 students and know everything about you at a very personal level, and then put that together for each company that you apply. Some could write any number of them. And just like Nazmi has said, those cover letters, reference letters cannot be canned, and standard letter, and one place where we see it's canned is if a male applicant is applying, but the cover or reference letter says she. We know somebody just copy pasted the document and they didn't really put anything in it. It's either a reflection of the poor reference writer or your poor relationship with the reference writer that they didn't care to put any time in it. So have your references ready, and please do company research and ask them questions in a polite way.
Other questions?
So we'll be applying like for we'll be applying for hundreds of companies, right? As in we will be having 100 of applications, out of which 90% of the replies will be like, we have found a person with better candidature. I have reviewed my resume with the career services with many of my seniors, and in spite of that, I'm getting the same reply again and again. Sometimes I feel that is it the genuine reply am I getting, or is it just the auto-generated reply that I'm getting by certain scanners? So that's my question. How is my resume? I mean, how is my profile reviewed?
I think maybe Nazmi can answer this question better than I do, but I just want to quickly insert a point saying that the one thing we when we're looking for job, trying to find a job, and we're like in a dire situation, what we cannot see is that we see ourselves fit to a job description, but does the company see that profile fit to what they actually need? You know? Because this is very difficult for us to say. So maybe most of your replies are genuinely saying that you don't fit here, or they found somebody else that is better than you. So don't see these as auto-generated emails, and don't feel like that. Okay, it doesn't mean that I shouldn't, like, this means I shouldn't send applications on the online system. Sometimes companies require you to send your application through the online system, then get in touch with the HR person, and also maybe get in touch with a manager. And maybe like when they see that, okay, they really want to come to this position, that's why they're trying from all the channels. So this is like, so there are many things, and maybe this is why I pointed out to Nazmi, is because she's also hiring people, so she can probably give a perspective on why, like, as a applicant, you see yourself fit to a position, but maybe the company does not see based on the resume. So yeah, that was my point.
Would Nazmia or Dr. Gautam like to go?
You can go.
Okay.
I'm not a hiring expert, okay, for sure. But just saying that it has to be really fitting to the job description, and then you need to show that you really spend time. It's not a template. That is very obvious when you got the resume. Very general resume. You can see. It has to be personalized. Even, for my own resume, on the top of the CV, there's some personal statement saying that what I'm interested in, what I would like to do, what I can do for you. It's not about you, it's about the company. So you need to show that. So yes, 100 application, it will take tons of times, but if you don't do it, you won't get anything.
Dr. Gautam?
Like Murali said, as much as we think it's a selection process, in the grand scheme of things, it's a rejection process. They're trying to find one that fits them. There's only one that they can find. So the other 99, if 100 applicants apply, other 99 will get what seems like a canned response or a standard response or a machine response. One way to kind of overcome that problem is what Nazmi had talked about, repeatedly apply. If you think you're a good fit for the company, invest the time and keep applying, and maybe just your persistence pays off and they'll budge and they'll hire you. But yeah, canned responses or think of it as a reflection of your resume and the amount of time that you put in preparing the application packet. If that's canned, very likely you're going to get a canned response. From my hiring position, I tend to look for not necessarily technical skills, but the people skills, because as a university, we have young faculty that are 27 years old, and we also have emeritus faculty that are 85 years old. Somebody that I hire has to interact with that 50 years or 60 years worth of age spectrum. And how they give their answer to somebody that's 27 is very different from how they communicate the same answer to somebody that's 87. And that's something difficult to teach, but it's the same damn command that they had to explain 27 and 87, but how you explain is very, very different. So if that person sent a canned resume, like Nazmi said, and there's no evidence of them being good at diversity or working with diverse group of people, and if it shows up in their interview, on top of everything else, any number of repeated applications will also get canned response.
I think if you ever get the interview with people, also the other important thing is that be available for the people. You know, I ask for somebody for, you know, send the resume. I think, for example, that person is my friend. I'm like, send the resume. I think you're a good fit. And then that person takes a month to send the resume. And what can I do? You know, because this, for example, in our culture, it's a startup culture, and then time is money for us. So I cannot wait for people to respond. You know, a day, 2 days, you know, I'm asking something, just respond it. A month is too long, guys. So over the phone, when you're talking to people, you know, your mood is also saying, I think, how passionate are you about the job, etc.
I think also with respect to like even interview, or if you have a phone conversation with a recruiter or an employer, whether they have a position for you immediately or not, just be sure that you write back to them and say like one line of thank you for their time, because they're also doing their job, and it's time consuming for them too. So it creates a good impression if you just write a one-liner. Thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing about other positions. I mean, let's say it's a recruiter and they have like 5 positions open right now, and you don't fit any of them. It might be your immediate tendency to think that maybe this recruiter is not fit for my profile, but maybe something else opens up 1 month from then. So just write back to them saying that thanks for your time, and like I'd be still interested to know about more positions that you have or something. You know, it helps both ways, and it helps them to feel valued, and in return they'll also value you and they'll consider you for their next position.
Yeah, another thing that I would like to add is, if you are asked for an interview, let's say you need to make a Zoom conference just like what we are doing, please still care about your attire and then where you are. In one of my interview, we asked for the person to turn on the camera, and then we find that he was in the bed. So that was, you know, because he wasn't expecting that we're gonna do that. Probably that's why he wasn't, you know, laying down, he was sitting on his bed, so that the computer was on his, you know, lap, so it was keep moving. Then I cannot even talk to, because I cannot focus. The camera is keep moving. You know, take it seriously. That would be my suggestion.
These have all been really good suggestions. I think we did have a question in the back of the room though, that I just wanted to give
interestingly, the suggestion is really in line with what I want to ask. It's about red flags during phone call interview. One for video call and the other for just voice call. So like now we've talked about CV, resume, cover letter. Now assuming you're in the process, you know, getting into the process of main interview. So what are the red flags? What are the things to be careful of? I'm sure you've been mentioning some of them, but if you are, what are these?
So I think Dr. Gautam would like to start off the answering for this round.
Proper outfit. Again, company research tells you what kind of culture they have, whether they require a sports jacket or a tie or business casual, business attire. Whatever it is, it doesn't hurt to be overdressed for in-person interviews. To let them complete the question and take about 5 to 10 seconds after they have completed their question before you start answering it. One, it prevents you from jumping into conclusions that could be inaccurate or incorrect. 2, it also gives the perception that you're a thinker and you know what you're talking about before you open your mouth. And 3, more often than not, if it's a multi-part question, answer could be hidden in a subsequent question. If you start answering right away, you might actually miss out on the answer that they're willing to give you. And please make eye contact and smile as much as possible. And doing this while on a conference call, they can still hear it.
So for like just voice call, if it's voice call, not video call, what are the things to watch? Okay, yeah.
And find yourself a comfortable place, and that's in a quiet place, and there's no traffic or dogs or cats screaming on you, around you. That's one thing. And please don't be eating or drinking something around. And have a notebook or pencil or paper ready to write stuff down. And doesn't hurt to have a quiet keyboard. If they're asking questions that you don't know but you'd like to answer and you can do it away with a quick research, be so gentle on your fingers as well. So they can hear those things on the other end.
Also, make sure that you have a secure line rather than a cell phone. I know that is difficult these days for most of you because you don't want the call to be dropped in the middle of the conversation. That's the other thing. And it will also say, talk to somebody. Don't take an 8 a.m. call in the morning when you haven't talked to anybody because your voice, your muscles are not all awake yet, and you will sound sleepy. You know how people, sometimes you answer the phone, it's 10 o'clock in the morning and they say, did you just wake up? And you're like, yeah, but how do you know that I just woke up? Your voice is telling them that you just woke up. So just make sure that you're up and have talked or singing in the shower or whatever you do to awaken your voice box so it doesn't come across that way. Yeah.
The way I like to look at this, whether it's a phone conversation or a video conference, is that just imagine yourself that you're going to be in an interview room. So take all the precautions that you would do if you were physically going to interview with a person. So just don't have any kind of distractions around you. I mean, if you're staying with friends, then let them know that, don't call me during this time, or don't come into the room during this time, something like that. So just make sure you have the right environment around you. And like G said, we like have a piece of paper and pen with you. This always helps. And if you have some kind of a headphone, this is also good. If you're talking on the cell phone and you don't have a headphone, you either have to put it on speaker and then take notes, or you're in a weird position where you're trying to hold the phone, So yeah, just imagine that you're going to be physically interviewing with someone and make all the precautions for that.
I would say, yes.
One last piece for an in-person interview, if it's a panel that's interviewing you, please make eye contact with everybody, not just with one or two people that you think you like. So, and as much as possible, please use gender-neutral language. Because the cultures that we come from, it's very easy to portray our own gender into our answers, but please make sure as much as possible it's gender neutral. Helps your cause, at least within the US.
And if you're having a call during the daytime when you're going to be on campus, I think there are several resources, like you can be in the library, or you can reserve a conference room. I did at least 1 or 2 interviews when I was at Michigan Tech, and I booked like a huge conference room that you would normally do for a master's or a PhD defense, and it was only me in there. But it doesn't matter if the conference room is free, you are allowed to book this, so you can do this, and this would be perfect.
I think we have time for one more question. If anybody has a question that they would like to hear from our panel. nobody has one, I have one for them, I guess. And it'll be similar to the tone that we ended the first hour on. So given that the topic here is navigating the job search as an international student, do you have any gold nuggets of wisdom or of advice or just encouragement that either wisdom you wish you would have known as you were going through, or encouragement to give as people are going through it right now, or just your biggest takeaway, biggest tip, or anything like that? I know we've talked about a lot of them, and there's probably been a lot of stuff that's happened, but I guess that we've managed to discuss. But if you have any other last closing remarks or something like this, or even just words of encouragement also.
So I think it can be really frustrating, especially if you don't get any response. I would prefer to get rejected rather than not getting anything. But that is the process. It's the same for everybody. I didn't really find many people who can find a job, especially international, right away. Most of the time, if you're really very well connected person, it's easier for you to find something. So don't give up. It will be okay.
Thank you, Nazmia.
I'd go by the order that we had from the beginning. So I think I always keep going back to time. So I would say there are several processes in not just hiring, but also on the legal side of international transitioning, an international student transitioning into a trainee and then into an employee. And IPS gives you timely emails and timely suggestions. I would say just keep sticking to those timelines. It doesn't hurt being 5 days in advance of their timeline, because if there are some last minute delays, there might be one person in IPS who's doing this for you, and if she has to go on vacation like without notice, then you shouldn't be in a situation where you're like, I did everything, but IPS is not doing their job. Never bring it to that situation. It's always nice to be ahead of their timeline, because it's the reason I specifically mentioned this is I've been hearing from many of my friends and colleagues from Michigan Tech that there is a delay in several processes now, which is nothing to do with the political situation. It's just how it is, because there are they still review these applications in paper. They get more and more applications every year. They probably don't have enough resources to handle this, but these are not within our limitation of things, right? All we can do is be ahead of timeline and don't regret that if I had sent it 10 days before, I wouldn't be in this loop. So getting your application for OPT, or once you have a job, going for the OPT extension or the H-1B, having a conversation with your employer about if they will sponsor your H-1B or not. Don't wait too long. I mean, once you feel comfortable with your employer, just start the conversation. At least you give yourself time to find another employer or go to them for a second time or something like that. So this is one final advice I would like to do.
So I would say that, as I mentioned also before, that and also for my mistake that I made, the PPL or whatever advance in time, because if you submit a job application, it takes time. And as for I can tell you in the academic perspective that for academic position, you don't apply too many compared to for the industry, you apply many positions. So it takes time, and it's always, at least I underestimated how long it takes to do a good application. And also please check with your supervisor or any other faculty members, because sometimes we think that, it's good enough, but it's not actually. So when somebody else look at your stuff, it's they always provide a constructive suggestions. So check with your supervisor. And the other thing is that for the international students, there are also some opportunities for the fellowship that I came to know it a bit better. So I didn't, again, have enough time to submit those, or I submitted it, in hurry. And So there are a lot of, for example, when I came here, the National Lab, I was interviewed for this fellowship position. And so that's also open for international students. So my point is there are also opportunities for international students also for like a postdoc fellowship. So you should explore those, prepare in advance. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Dr. Gautam?
My recommendation or suggestion would be to treat each application for each job that you do as a project. And if it fails, treat it as a failure of the project and not necessarily try to attach it to your self-worth. It is very difficult. Any personal failure or professional failure, we tend to attach our own self-worth that we failed. And it's taken me 10 plus years and a year and a half of conscious effort and not to associate or not to kind of evaluate myself on everything that I fail or everything that I succeed at. Anything and everything that I succeed, there's probably 100 people that are helping me. And anything that I failed at, they also help, but things just didn't work out. So same thing with these jobs as well. And get all the help that you need for now, and when it's your turn, make sure you pay it forward to somebody else. So that'd be my 2 cents.
Yes, so then thank you all for your final thoughts and all of your wisdom. Let's go ahead and thank our panelists for taking time out of their day and their careers to be here with us and offer their wisdom. So thank you to everybody for being here. Thank you all for being here. If you did not sign in, please sign in before you leave. And if you would like to be put in contact with anybody that was part of this panel, email gsg-academic and I would be happy to connect you electronically. So thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate it.
And I want to just take a minute and say thank you all. Thank you first Jacob for organizing a series of events this whole year, including this one. You're fantastic. I know you put a lot of effort, so thank you. And thank you Nazmiya and Murali and Santosh and G. Gautam for participating in this. I know Murali, this is your second time this year, so we really appreciate your time calling in from Europe and helping us with this.
Thank you.
Nazmiya,
And
great to see you.
Great to see you too. Thank you.